You're watching Channel 7 Eyewitness News with Bill Butel and John Johnson. Corey McFerrin has sports, Storm Field with weather, and the Eyewitness News team. Now,
It can be, and if not, why not? Tonight, Jim Dolan continues our investigation into the emergency at EMS with a system that does seem to work. Jim?
Bill, some of the problems that slow New York's emergency medical service ambulances are beyond the control of those in charge of the system. They can't do anything about clogged streets, for example, though heavy traffic often slows an ambulance from getting to where it's needed. Still, there are steps that EMS could take that would assure you getting an ambulance when you need one. We learned about some of those steps from the best EMS system in the country, Seattle, Washington. They have some advice for New York, a place where there's an emergency at EMS.
Yeah, just go down Denny and then just cut across, go right over.
While Seattle seems a whole different world than New York, much of the work its EMS system encounters is the same. Gunshots, stab wounds, and on this run, an old man whose vital signs are desperately low.
You can lay back now. Can you count to 10 for me?
EMS has been so successful here in Seattle that it has gotten worldwide attention. And since medics go into this line of work to save lives, its success has made the men and women who work here especially happy.
It makes it doubly rewarding when you're appreciated by the people that you work for and the physicians in the area. Very rewarding job.
And while politicians back home argue about the cost-benefits ratio of improving EMS in New York, in Seattle, they know what the results are.
You change the death rate from particular illnesses. You change the death rate from heart attack or myocardial infarction. You change the death rate of premature birth. You change the death rate from people who were shot in the street. You change the death rate from people who are run over in intersections. So ultimately, the city benefits. Other people come and say, gee, this best place to have a heart attack is in Seattle. Well, that's a terrible generalization, but what it reflects is that the city's prepared to deal with that problem.
And in fact, it is a better place to have a heart attack than any place else.
That's true.
Okay, you just try to relax because Dave and I are going to be here with you. We're not going to let anything happen to you, okay?
Many of the things that make the Seattle EMS system work so well just couldn't be transplanted to the big city of New York. But there are some things that the big city could learn from the little city. For example, when the EMS system in New York arrives at the scene of an incident, if the person wants to go to the hospital, EMS has to take them to the hospital. In Seattle, though, that's not the case. If a paramedic decides that it's not an emergency, not serious, they call a private service called Shepherd, and they transport. That frees up the paramedic to do more serious work.
If you want it to be a response system, then make it a response system. If you want it to be an ambulance system, then be willing to say we have a transport system. It's a little different than the buses, it's a little different than the taxi cabs, but it's just a transport system. If you want it to save lives, then you got to be able to put it someplace so it can get to the life it needs to save in a hurry.
In Seattle, when it's determined that the patient is safe in a private ambulance, the city's medics are then free to handle more serious problems. That is not an option for New York's medics, who must transport even the least illness. For example, this patient has a slight fever, but demanded a trip to the hospital. New York's EMS cannot refuse.
The calls for the splinters in the finger and the stubbed toes and the blisters and the calls that don't need an ambulance, they're not life or death.
Just how successful is the Seattle EMS? Well, while New York reaches less than half of its most critical calls in 6 minutes, Seattle reaches almost all of its patients, critical or not, in 4 minutes. And the statistics show clearly that fast response time means saved lives. Until changes are made in New York, folks here will live and die with this system. So you better know it well. Tomorrow we'll finish up the series with a look at how to make EMS work for you. And when it doesn't work for you, what you can do about it. Surviving EMS, tomorrow at 6.